Hi, everybody. Thank you all so much for joining us today.
How's it going, everyone?
So, yeah, welcome. This is going to be a fun day. We're going to talk all about seed starting. And I am here next to some of our seeds that we actually have going and some herbs that we propagated actually with you probably like 4 weeks ago now, I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah, we had this seed starting station. Like, this is a smaller version of the bigger ones that we do, and we had this in our pantry. And we did a terrible job of taking care of it. Like, it's just because it was so kind of out of the way, we never really went in there. So we moved it into our kitchen, like just like New Year's Eve. We did this, I think. I think that's what we did for our big New Year's Eve party. We were doing a lot of planting. So we moved that into like our kitchen. Someone said sound. Can y'all hear us okay? Does it?
Hopefully, we're good.
Okay. Yeah, let us know in the chat if something's up with the sound, because we do have like a new arrangement going. Like, I've got this new like microphone I'm using and stuff. So if something doesn't work right, let us know. But we just moved our seed starting station into the kitchen, so we've been doing a lot of. It's still a little early for us to start our seeds. So mostly what we've been doing is propagation of like rosemary and oregano. We're doing some microgreens, and we are doing some like smaller greens that we're going to be doing, like in our indoor garden area that we've got in our sunroom. So, so yeah, we're excited to talk all about seed starting. We did this 2 weeks ago, Carrie. We did a one over seed
Yeah.
starting, but
Yeah.
really that one was focused on like how to track it in the app and how to manage it. And there were some questions that came up during that, and we wanted to kind of just go a little more in depth on some of this and cover any questions you have, and talk about some more in-depth stuff. So that's what we're doing today. And if you are new here, welcome. We
Yeah,
do
I was going
these.
to say we should probably back up and introduce ourselves if
Yeah.
we have any newcomers here. If you are new, welcome. I'm so glad you're here with us. So, I am Carrie, and this is my husband, Dale. And we started growing food for our family back in 2015. I always get the year wrong. It's somewhere around there. It's been a
About
while now.
10 years. Yeah. About our 10th year of growing food now. So
Oh, there we go. It's our 10th anniversary. It's exciting. Yeah, but we started with just a, backyard like this with like nothing, and it was just solid Bermuda grass. And over the course of a couple years, you could say we got obsessed with it and we turned it over into this. Here's us and our family just a couple years later. And yeah, we went from knowing nothing to having a backyard full of food and flowers and just amazingness.
we're
So,
both pretty obsessive and pretty intense when we get into something. So right after we met, about a year, I guess, right after we got married, we started gardening together, and then we built our app along with some of our best friends to make it easy for other people to do the same thing, because there's a lot of stuff we had to learn, a lot of things we had to keep track of, and quite frankly, we just kind of needed an app to help us keep track of our ever expanding garden. Now we're on 5 acres, so it's even a larger garden. So the app
well,
has
and
kind of
also,
grown with us.
yeah, I was going to say, and also, like, I didn't have to do calculations anymore because that was probably the hardest thing whenever we started gardening was having to remember when my frost dates were and all of that. Like, there was just so much to know, and being able to just pull up the app and it gives me exact dates. I'm like, it's a lifesaver.
So anyway, we're going to talk all about today seed starting. So if you have any questions, throw them in the chat. We did take some of the questions from the last session we had a few weeks ago, and that's kind of some of the stuff we're talking about. Things like when you use a heat mat and when you don't, and all that type of stuff. We're going to go like really in depth on. But if you have other questions, throw them in the chat. That will enter you to win a free 1 year subscription to our From Seed to Spoon app. That gives you full access to all the features, unlimited use of our GrowBot AI tool, where you can take pictures of like plants in your garden or pests in your garden. It'll tell you what to do about it. And you also get free shipping on all of your orders through our store, which is we're partnered with Park Seed, and so we have access to all of their products right in our store, and we really like their seeds. So if you want to do some seed shopping and buy the exact varieties we'll be talking about today. As we talk about varieties, those are the only seeds we grow, or the seeds that are from our app. So we have a lot of experience with these varieties and can tell you our favorite ones, and we'll be doing some of that today, I'm sure too. So, all right, well, let's jump in.
I do want to mention also, so with that giveaway, I know you mentioned we had another giveaway going last week at that workshop, just like we will be at the end of this one. So if you guys don't win at the end, comment after the fact. This will be posted again on our YouTube channel and you will be entered to win again. So for those of you who are watching after the fact, not able to join us live, you still have a chance to win. And right before this, we went through and drew a winner. Let me see if I can pull up the winner's info here. There it is. Congratulations, Wendy. You can email us at info@seedtospoon.net and we will get you all set up with your goodies from last week. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Wendy. So we're going to be giving another one away at the end of this live stream. And then again, next week, we'll do the exact same thing we just did and announce a winner from whoever's left a comment after this video goes up to YouTube. So if you caught us late, or if you're watching this on YouTube after the fact, you can still leave a comment there and be entered to win. All right. Well, let's jump in and start talking about seed starting.
Yay. Okay. Well, I mean, before I feel like we dive in, I do want to feel like, why would you even care first? Like,
Yeah.
maybe you just buy all of your transplants at the store and it's been going okay. But I'm here to tell you that starting your own seeds is way better. And if you're not already doing it, you definitely need to. There's so many benefits to doing it. You get such a wide variety of varieties to pick, and there's so many unique things you can grow. Like for me personally, I love growing like all of these like purple vegetables and like the rainbow colors. There's so many unique varieties. You can grow a different type of green and all that for everything, every flavor. There's just hundreds. It's amazing. And plus, I will say, like, one seed packet is going to be less probably than one transplant that you buy at a local nursery. So you will be able to save so much money. And with one seed packet, I mean, you can get like it depends on how many seeds you get, but you can have anywhere from like 20 to 100 different plants into one seed packet. So, I mean, there's just so many benefits to it.
Especially when it comes to things like lettuce and things like that. Like I'll sometimes like feel like if we're at a store and someone's about to buy lettuce, like I'll almost like want to go over there and stop them. Like, hey, let me help you out. Like I can get in. Like I guess that's why we had to make an app for this, because I kept interrupting people at the store, telling them to buy seeds instead. But there's a lot of things that you're going to save a lot of money on. Now there are other things where sometimes we will still buy transplants because it's more convenient or it's easier, especially if we're dealing with like an apple tree. Like I'm not going to start an apple from seed. Um, I mean, I might just because it's fun, but if I'm wanting to grow a lot of apples, I'm not going to do that because it's going to take a long time and there's a lot of other factors going into it. But when it's especially things like lettuce and really most like the vegetables that we're growing, we're starting our own seeds on. And there's some
I
complexities that come in with like potatoes and stuff, and we'll talk about that too. But
Yeah, I do love this right here. Saying I like the purple beans because they're easier to find, and I'm like that. That's a terrific suggestion too. Like it
that's a
just,
great tip.
yeah,
Yeah.
I like that.
Another big thing too, like if you have kids like we do, having different colors of plants is a great way to get them to try it too. Like purple mashed potatoes. I mean, they love mashed potatoes anyway,
So
but
fun.
especially like the purple mashed potatoes and stuff, they really like. Um, and also if you are kind of just getting into gardening, you may think like I want to grow basil, and that's kind of your mindset is that you want to grow basil, but once you get into gardening, I bet you'll quickly become kind of like Carrie, and you'll have a favorite. Carrie, what's your favorite basil? I'm sure you can tell them all.
My favorite basil is the cinnamon basil. And I'm sure if you guys have joined us for any of our workshops last year, I'm sure you heard me talking about cinnamon basil. It just smells so good, tastes incredible. I love it. It's almost like sweet. I put it into like our sweet potatoes and into our carrots too, and it just makes them so sweet. Oh, it's so good. I love it. And plus, when they bloom, they have these really beautiful purple blooms on them, so it makes it really pretty too. So I love cinnamon basil.
See how excited she gets about basil? I mean, before we started growing our own seeds, you really don't find out these things about plants until you start doing that. Like, spinach is another one for us where there's like legit 5 to 10 different spinach varieties that we have to grow because we use them all for different purposes and things like that. So hopefully we have sold you on starting from seed. Wendy, thank you for helping out here too. Yeah. If you've got other reasons you like to grow food, like help us out. Throw them in the chat. We got to talk everyone into growing their own seeds here. So, um, all right. So let's. I made our presentation go away, Carrie. I'm sorry, I accidentally did that. Can you pull it back up, and then we'll jump into talking about when to? Because I saw some questions come up about when to start in specific places. Like Dell asked about when to start sweet potato slips here in Indiana. Um, so a lot of these types of questions are going to be very conditional. I mean, you told me you're in Indiana, so that helps, but it's going to vary like based on where you live. So that's one of the reasons why we built the app. Um, so in the app, you can actually go to whatever plant you want to grow. You can just search for it. When you go into the dashboard here, I'm going to share my screen and just share the app for a moment and share how you can do this. So when you come into the dashboard, you can just search for a plant. So if you want to grow spinach, for example, you can search for spinach and then click on it, and then it will give you planting dates that are calculated for where you live. Now, this is my like simulator running on my computer, and it's set for California. I am in Oklahoma, so these dates are not right for me. But this will work for all the different plants we have. Give you exact planting dates. We also have like a calendar that is available. You can get to it from the dashboard here as well. It's one of our premium features. I'm not logged into our premium account here, so I can't see it there. Um, but that's one of the reasons why we built the app. We also have a plant now section that shows you what you can plant right now as well and what you can start inside and all of that. So um, we're not going to cover too much of like specific plants of talking about when to start each one. We are going to talk about kind of the range that we go through as far as when we start seeds and why and the different type of seeds that we start and all that kind of stuff. So okay. I made our presentation go away again.
You're good at
We
that.
gotta pull it up again.
There we go.
All righty.
I had to pull this up really quick. Carol says space spinach was the first spinach she was able to grow. So delicious. And I will 100% agree. Like space spinach is amazing. I love it.
Yep, and that's one of the varieties we do have in the app too. So,
Mhm.
and don't forget, you can save 15% with code Spoon15 on all of your orders through the app. And if you are a yearly subscriber, then you get free shipping on all of your orders. So that's a great way to buy your seeds. And I think Park Seed is running a 25. Carrie, you're more plugged in than I am. A 25% off on seeds right now.
Yeah, I saw somebody
Yeah.
commented on
So
that.
that beats our Spoon 15 right now. So check out the Park Seed website as it's at the top there. I imagine if I should know this, but okay.
Yeah,
All right. So
there
let's
it
talk
is.
about.
Thanks, Harry
There
Warp.
we go. Thank you. Yep. So 25% off, and again, you can use that in the app too. Those coupons work on the app as well. Okay. So if we've talked you into starting seeds, let's talk about some supplies that you're going to need. Um,
I guess we already did cover when to
Yeah,
plant.
I
So
think so. Yeah, I think we've covered that pretty in depth. If that doesn't make sense to anyone, just let us know in the chat. Okay, so let's talk about supplies. There's a lot of different ways you can start seeds. Our favorite way to start seeds is with the biodome. Carrie, can you grab one of the biodomes behind you? And we'll kind of just briefly show this. We really covered this in depth a couple weeks ago, and we planted out a couple. So this biodome she's showing right now is rosemary that we transplanted or we propagated probably about a month ago at this point now. So we took our adult rosemary plant and snipped some off of it and propagated it in here. And if you pull up um, one of those sponges, you'll be able to see. I'm gonna take away the PowerPoint again. Here, let me switch to maybe this will work. There we go. Okay, so if you want to pull out one of the sponges, you can see
Yeah,
that we
I
already
might put
have.
it down because I just watered these, so I was worried it was gonna spill all over me.
Look at that.
Yeah,
Wow. It's
look at
ready to
that.
go. So it's
I
the
know.
easiest way to do propagation on herbs and stuff. So if you want to know more about how to propagate your own herbs and how to do like what we just did there, again, check out our live stream from like a month ago where we just literally did like we planted it out and did it on the live stream. So those are ready to go. We love using a biodome. It, especially for anything that's finicky or hard to start, we're going to be using a biodome because it just makes it so much easier. Um, we also use the Bootstrap Farmer trays. So that's the picture that's over on the left here. I'm going to go full screen on this for a second so y'all can see this. So this is the setup that we have in our garage where I just have some simple 2x4 shelves with shop lights hung on these adjustable hangers. Do we have a QR code for those adjustable hangers in case people want to check those out? It really helps out because it makes it to where we can adjust the lights to go higher or lower. And we'll talk more about lights here in a minute, but just want to call that out while I see it on the picture. These trays that we use from Bootstrap Farmer are awesome because they last a very long time. I am really rough on equipment. Like I leave stuff outside. We just have a really busy life. It's inevitably I'm going to forget to clean something up the way I'm supposed to. I'm not good at that. And all of the other seed starting equipment that we used before, we pretty much counted on it being a one season use, and then it was over. And oftentimes it was like literally one planting and it was done because the cells started falling apart or the trays got a crack in them and started leaking water, or as you're like carrying trays across the for us, which is a farm now, the tray would flex and water would spill out all the front and go all down your shirt. Now you got this dirty like water all over you, and you're supposed to be on a live stream in 20 minutes, so you got to like get ready. So anyway, that was kind of our life before we switched to these bootstrap trays, and these trays are awesome because they are extremely durable. Like we've got videos like testing them with all of our different, like having our farm animals like stand on them and things like that. And or that was with the biodome. The
That was with
biodome's a
startup,
similar
but
thing
we've done it
too.
with Bootstrap
Yeah.
before too. We actually have a picture of one of our chihuahuas inside of one and just holding him up with it, and he was just hanging out in it.
So we love all of the bootstrap products, and we carry them in our store. We really wanted to be able to have them in our store, so we're thankful to have them, and we highly recommend them because they're going to last a very long time. Like I said, I am so hard on my equipment, and these trays just put up with it all. And we just finished going through like a 4 hour exercise of getting all of our trays cleaned up and sanitized and power washed and all of that, and they look brand new, ready to go again. And I cannot tell you how much I have put these trays through of leaving outside in the rain and the snow and the heat of Oklahoma, all the things that like I'll have them just out there in the garden just sitting there, and they're still doing great. So highly recommend those bootstrap trays if you're going to be starting seeds on a continual basis. If you're just going to try, if you've never tried it and you're just going to try it once to see how it goes, it may not be worth it for you to invest a whole bunch of money in seed starting equipment. And I say a whole bunch, it's not going to cost you a ton for these, but if you want to do like the scale that we're doing, it would. But I don't recommend starting like on that scale. Like definitely start slow on this because you can get overwhelmed in a hurry, and um, you end up with a ton of plants when you do this. And if you don't have anywhere for these plants to go when they get to transplant time, that can get a little chaotic. So, start slow with a couple, maybe one or two biodomes or seed starting trays or however you're going to do it. I recommend kind of starting slow there. So those are the main materials we use for seed starting when it comes to like the trays and that type of equipment. Um, let's talk about kind of what goes in the trays now. Ah, perfect slide. Look at that timing. So in the biodome, it's easy. You just have the sponges. You don't have to do anything. Like that's one of the reasons why we like them so much because we have a ton of stuff to grow and it just makes it so much easier. Also, the sponges are like sanitized, like they're ready to go. If we grow in the bootstrap trays, then we make our own seed starting mix. Or you can also buy seed starting mix from a spoma, which we carry in our store. So if you'd rather do that as well and save time, then you can just buy that, and we've used that, and that works great as well. Again, on like the scale that we're doing this, we're going to be doing a lot. So we're going to be making our own generally, and we usually make it with a mix of coconut core, which is what you see on the left. It's just this compressed brick of coconut core that you soak in water. It expands. We have some pretty cool time lapse videos showing how it expands. Let's make another one of those. It's time for us to do them. Those are always cool videos. So we'll just put that in like warm water, let it expand, and then mix that with some vermiculite. Um, we also add in worm castings. We have a worm farm in our garage already, so it's this is something that's pretty easy for us to do. If you don't have a worm farm, you can typically find like worm castings on like Facebook Marketplace or like it used to be on Craigslist, but I don't think anyone really uses Craigslist anymore. I know I don't, but I can find it on Facebook Marketplace or Facebook groups. You can probably buy it somewhere, but I'm buying my worm poop local. That's just kind of how I am. So, um, so
Uh,
anyway, we mix all that together.
yeah, so Chrissy had a great question of do you have to start with fresh soil or coconut core every year?
We will reuse old stuff. Um, Sometimes like we'll go through like and sanitize it if we're worried about it. Like we'll basically just bake it in the oven. It just depends on where that soil came from and if it had any issues before. Um, Yeah. So let's talk a little about how we sanitize our trays and stuff, though. So what we did was, so these trays were in rough shape. Like they had been sitting. They had like some mold growing on them. They were pretty bad. And they had like a lot of them still had like they were like leftover trays from like the very end of the season when we're trying to squeeze in more stuff. Some stuff didn't germinate, so there's still like the old seed starting stuff that was in there that had been sitting in the garage for like 6 months untouched, right? So that's kind of our starting point. So we started just by getting everything out. I just dumped all the soil into a big giant trash can that I kind of collect all this old soil into. Um, when I say soil, this is seed starting mix. There's no compost or any life in the soil. So let me clarify. This is literally just like I think of this differently than my soil that's going out in the garden. This is just seed starting mix. I don't want there to be life or compost in it because that's going to introduce issues indoors with pests and with mold and all sorts of other things that can go wrong. So the only kind of life that I have in the soil is the worm castings. I just want to explain that briefly. So we dumped all that out, and then at that point we had trays that still kind of had dirt on it and stuff. So then we took all of that out and power washed it. Just put it out on our driveway and spent like an hour going through and just power washing them till all the residue and everything was off. And then um, we utilized our bathtub, which really made this a lot easier. We put all of the trays in the bathtub and filled it with some bleach and hot water and let it sit for like 10 to 20 minutes. And then utilized our shower and then moved them into the shower, like sprayed them all off in the shower. We found that's just the easiest way to do this for us, at least on the scale that we're working with. If you're only dealing with a couple trays, like just use your sink, you'll be fine. It would take us forever to do the sink, and then we're getting like our kitchen all dirty from all this. So for us on this,
Pretty much we've always used our bathtub and shower. Like that's what we've always done since we started because it's just easier.
yeah,
There's a lot more space to work with when you're washing big things like this, and it just makes it easier.
yep,
Oh, looks like we're not the only one here.
there we go. Yep, that's like the ultimate hack. And if you have like a sprayer in the shower, that really helps too. So we use all that
Yes.
kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
okay, so let's cover lights now. Is that another slide or is
Um, I have heat map, but we can kind of go back. The light we have kind of showing right here a little
Okay.
bit.
Do we have another slide where we're going to talk about lights more, though?
Hmm.
Okay, so let's talk about lights and what kind of lights you're going to need for seed starting. Um, it does not have to be complicated. If you are just starting seeds, it can just be a standard shop light that you can get for like $20 at Walmart, or like typically we go to Sam's Club to get our big shop lights. Um, but it can be that simple. It only gets complex whenever you start trying to grow seeds all the way to fruiting, because then they need different colors of light when they go into their fruiting phases, and it gets complex. We're not going to get complex with it. We're seed starting. It's simple. All you got to do is have some shop lights with daylight color. That works best. Every shop light made in the last like 40 years is that anyway. Maybe if you find a really old one that's a yellow light, that's still going to work fine too for seed starting. So we have migrated all of our seed starting lights over to be LED for a couple of reasons. Number one is the heat produced from them is way less, pretty much non-existent. I mean, um, it's just before the old lights we had put off way more heat, and that can be a problem when you're trying to grow things that don't like heat. So also the energy savings, and just using less energy too. So we have switched everything over to LED. They've gotten cheap enough where it's worth that for us, and we haven't had any issues. Again, the key for the lights for us is the adjustable plant hangers. That way, it makes it easy to move them up or down, because it's really important to be like right next to the plant. Like it's got to be like just a few inches away from the seedling, and you keep adjusting it as it grows. So,
Yeah, they
um,
definitely are a huge time saver for us. Before, like we were really like messing with like the hangers that they came with, like the little metal hangers. We take them off and then like move them up. Like, yeah, we don't have to do that anymore, so it's great.
Yeah. And you can buy like a smaller scale grow light too, like this one that we have on the right in this picture over here is more of like a countertop one. So if you want to grow on a smaller scale, you can do that. And then what Carrie has behind her is very similar to what we have in our garage, except it's 2 foot lights. So I don't know, Carrie, are you able to move your camera to show that at all? Like, um, yeah, so this is just a standard like wire shelf that we got from like Target or Sam's Club or something like really cheap. And then just put these 2 foot grow lights on it. And this works great. We can do two biodomes on each one. Um, and this is working great as well. And then even like on the very top, like we're using that space with like this other like little grow light thing I had just sitting around, that we ended up just kind of we zip tied it to it. We do a lot of zip tying around here. So that's kind of our top area for microgreens. So there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of do this setup. You can make it look really nice on your counter with a smaller grow light, or you could do, I mean, it doesn't look bad with what we have going there either. So, um, okay, so let's go into our next part of it, which is heat mats, because this is a question we get a lot about when to use heat mats, when not to. Um, Technically, you don't have to use a heat mat for anything. You can germinate tomatoes and peppers without a heat mat. Um, it's a lot easier if you have a heat mat, and it's going to go faster if you have a heat mat. So, first, let's talk about what you would need to use heat mats on. And for us, it's pretty much only peppers and tomatoes. And then also, there's some flowers that prefer um, and then also, we tried to start loofah early last year. I don't think we really needed to. Carrie was just really excited about loofah,
I always
so
get excited.
we started loofah just to make her happy, and we had this loofah getting out of control in the seed starting area by like March, but or is April, whenever it was like we had a loofah like climbing our seed starting rack, but it made her happy, so we did
I
it.
I didn't care at all.
So, but the point is, it's really only tomatoes and peppers for us that we're using heat mats on, and like some of the flowers.
Yeah.
Everything else that we're starting from seed isn't going to need the heat mat. Now, there are other things that, like, if I were to start cucumbers or watermelon or something like that from seed, I would use a heat mat, but I don't ever start those from seed indoors. Those all grow really fast outside on their own, and this is something I guess we didn't really talk too much about that we should talk about is like what we start indoors versus what we don't, because we don't start everything inside. It's actually probably, I would say, maybe half of what we grow, if that, is started inside versus started outside. And that's just because we grow a lot of peppers and tomatoes. Um, but things like beans and peas and any type of root crop, we don't start any of that indoors. It does just fine outside. Usually it does better whenever we start it directly outside. So we don't really grow a lot of that, or we don't start any of that indoors. So when it comes to heat mats, one big recommendation I have is to buy a switch that automatically kicks it on or off based on the temperature. So, Carrie, I don't know if do we have that in our store?
Yeah, I'm pulling it up right now. Give me a
Okay,
sec.
cool. So that makes a big difference, because if you have your heat mat on all of the time, it's going to get too hot, and that's going to be a separate problem. So it's a thermostat. That's a simple word for what I'm trying to describe. We have a
Yeah.
thermostat for our heat mat, so that it has a probe that goes into. We put it into the biodome, and then it kicks on automatically whenever it needs it, and then off whenever it doesn't. If you're going to use a heat mat, I highly recommend using one of those, because it's very easy to overheat them without it. So definitely recommend one of these automatic thermostats if you're going to use a heat mat. But again, for like pretty much peppers and tomatoes are the only things we're using a heat mat on, and even then, it's so that they just germinate faster and go and grow better. But um, you don't have to do that with tomatoes. Tomatoes are going to germinate, like, as long as it's not below, like, I mean, I don't have the specific, like, it's like probably 55 or 60, but you're not going to be keeping, I guess your garage could get that cool, especially if it's not heated. But so that's really where you got to think about, like, if you're going to be using a heat mat for tomatoes or not. Now, peppers can be more finicky, and peppers do not ever want to be below 55. So, like, that's, you know, if you're going to be growing in a garage or something, and you're up in the north and it gets really cold, and um, then you definitely, like, would probably need a heat mat for peppers. But even then, like, the way that before we added heat mats or anything, like, we would germinate peppers up on top of, like, we used to have this entertainment center that the TV was in, and our old TV used to generate a lot of heat. So, like, it was always hot on top of that entertainment center. So we would just put them up there, because they don't need light to germinate. So they would get all the heat they needed up there. And so there's other ways to do it. If you don't have a heat mat, but um, if you're going to be growing a lot, then it's definitely worth an investment to have one. I saw a question about, like, what flowers we start indoors versus out. Um, Carrie, off the top of your head, can you kind of list off, like, the main things that we definitely start indoors versus outdoors? Because I know some things like zinnia and all that we can do either on, but what do we definitely start indoors when it
The
comes to
ones
flowers?
indoors that I start are the ones that I want to get a head start on typically, and I want them blooming pretty quick. So typically indoors, I'm starting things like the petunias, and we did marigolds because I want them to be like as big as possible whenever I plant them out, because I'm typically using those for companion planting. Calendula, I do those indoors. Nasturtium, all of those I start indoors.
I saw a question here too. A great question. It ranges. I think 85 is pretty common for if I'm growing peppers or tomatoes, but I've used the heat mat for other settings as well. It's been a bit since I've used the heat mat, so I'm not sure exactly what I had it set to, but I know it was 85 whenever I was doing peppers and tomatoes.
I
But
was gonna say that sounds familiar because I remember like I would check in on it, make sure it was working. Um,
yeah, but I
that
think we also had one that we did that was 75. I don't remember what that was for. Again, like, last
I
year
think
was
it
our
was for
first
some
year.
flowers. We had it set a little bit lower so it wasn't like as cold as it was in our garage because we were getting some cold nights, but it
Mhm.
was warm enough to still like do a little bit of help.
Yeah, last year was our first year to start a bunch of flowers inside. Like, we had grown a little bit inside, but not anywhere close to the scale that we did last year. So we used our heat mat a lot more last year than we we typically do. Yeah, that's a great option too. If you have a space heater, you can have it around there too. So, and a lot of times, like just the grow lights themselves will put off some heat too, especially if you have a lot like on our wire shelf. Like it can get a little warmer there than it is around there because you have so many lights kind of crammed into one area. So,
I don't know if we popped this one up yet, about what do you use for root crops. So I do want to make sure we cover. I know we covered a little bit about some things that we do indoors versus outdoors, but I do want to make sure that we mention, like, for all root crops, we're typically starting those directly outdoors, just because I mean they're root crops, so I don't want to have any sort of risk of them having any sort of damage to them whenever I'm transplanting them. And they typically grow just so much better without us moving them and messing with them and just putting them where they're going to be.
yep. And even then, like even with a lot of our root crops, a lot like carrots, we're growing all those from seed tape, just because it's so much easier. Same with radish. We're not going to use seed tape on beets because those seeds are really big. Um, but for the other ones, we are. Okay. So next slide that we've got here is on thinning seedlings. So this is important to do. And it can be hard to do because you don't want to it's a tough thing to swallow. You got this tiny little plant that looks like it's going to do great and you've got to thin it down. But if you
I know
don't,
it's always so devastating. I always feel so bad.
yeah. But if you don't, then you're not going to end up with a healthy plant. So make sure that you're going through and thinning down your seeds and selecting. Now, one common kind of mistake I think that people make here is choosing the biggest one. And that's not always what I will do because sometimes the biggest one may be like leggier than the others, meaning it's like taller. And typically, I'm looking for the one that is. Yeah, this is a picture that is great at showing this. So look at the picture, like the one that's the second one over from the right, closest to the camera. See how leggy that looks? Like it's just that is not. I'm gonna have some issues with that one. Whereas some of the other ones that are shorter are going to be. I'm gonna zoom in on this picture so it's easier to see too. Some of the other ones that are shorter are gonna just be. They're gonna be the ones I'm gonna be choosing. So I'm also looking for like shades of green, like which one looks to be like the darkest shade of green. And absolutely, we use them as microgreens, so we'll throw them on like a wrap or something, or usually I'll just eat them as I'm thinning. Like they don't make it all the way to a wrap and just like munching as I go.
Start snacking.
Yeah. So it's a good way to sample microgreens to see what you like, and then you can grow a lot of. And if you're not sure about microgreens, like it's basically just this, like it's this stage of a plant that you harvest, and people would typically grow them to where it's like an entire tray of a bunch of them. Almost looks like a grass of broccoli, is what it would look like. And and then you can harvest those, and it's like a superfood. We've done a lot of videos about this and live streams. So if you want to know more about that, just search for microgreen, and you'll see that. Okay, so leggy, we talked about that on the last one, but just that's something you want to try to avoid. Let's talk just a little bit about what causes leggy seedlings. So usually it's caused by the lights being too far away from the seedlings. So that's one of the reasons why you want to have it like right there on top of it. Um, we've also seen it because like we had one grow light that went out and we didn't realize it, like in the middle of like a cluster of four, so that can be a cause of it as well, but it's going to be light related if it's leggy like that. It means it's not getting enough.
Yeah, so sometimes you'll see these too, like if you're trying to germinate in a windowsill and it's not bright enough, things like that. You'll notice them kind of starting to reach and stretch to the light because they're trying to get to the light and they're just not getting enough. So, if you see this, I mean, there's still things you can do. It depends on, frankly, like what point of the season we're in, if we're going to try to restart or if we just try to fix them, but they're definitely fixable still. Just make sure if it's a light issue, you fix the light issue. You can also just lower the lights too, make them a lot closer. And then if you don't already have a fan in your seed starting area, I do want to mention a fan because that will help these to get some strength before they are put back out into the garden, because these right here are so weak, and because they're super flimsy. So putting a fan on them is going to help them, like, you know, pump up their strength, essentially, make them stronger before they go outside. And depending on what it is, too, sometimes you can plant them like a little bit deeper down into the soil as well. So things like tomatoes, like you can plant a lot up, like up into the stem.
Yeah, and even like with broccoli, you can plant that a little deep too.
Yeah.
Um, but definitely with tomatoes, like, you can plant those, like, really deep, so don't worry about those if they get leggy, those will definitely recover. This another thing that so we had leggy seedlings actually on the seed starting rack that was behind Carrie, and that was a sign to me I didn't have enough lights on the shelf, and they were too far away, but I also didn't have enough because of the way they were stretching over. So I actually added, I think we added 1 more light per shelf, or was it
Did,
2? We
yeah.
added 1
We
more light per
had
shelf.
three, and now we have four on each
Yeah.
shelf.
So that's another thing to look for too. But that's what that's an indicator of, is you've got some sort of a light issue.
Yeah, so this is a great point too from Chrissy. She says, "Is it true to it? It's good to brush through the starts to strengthen them." And absolutely, in a way that kind of just mimics what the fan is doing. If you just put your hand lightly in there, they also say to go sing to your seedlings too, which I want all of you guys to go out there and do right now. If you go out there like singing and talking to them too, like because you're breathing on them, you're moving the air, and it's
Do your plants have any favorite songs, Carrie, that you've seen?
fun. Probably, I mean, probably anything Disney, I'm sure.
Let It
That's
Grow?
really, yeah, let it grow.
Okay, mold. So mold is another issue that is commonly encountered when you're dealing with when you're doing seed starting, and, the fan that Carrie talked about last is a great way to help with it. So, not only is the fan going to, um, spread the air around and make it to where it's just not as it's not stagnant, because that's what can lead to mold. That's going to really help, but it's also going to help strengthen the plants as well, like she mentioned on the last slide. So that's one thing we do, is we always have a fan. Now we don't have a fan going on the one in the kitchen because I don't want to hear a fan going in the kitchen. That one we're just going to be dealing with, like, we're not really doing a lot of our plan for this kitchen area is to do a lot of microgreens here, not necessarily to do a lot of our, like, seed starting right there, because we have a ton of seed starting space out in our garage. Carrie, can you pull up a picture of our seed starting area that we have in the garage so they can kind of see what we're, and we recorded a lot of content out there. Like, we were doing our live streams from out there last
Here's
year.
one.
So this is like, we have one of these wire racks there. We have like a bunch of these
Sorry.
shelves set up. Like, um, yeah. So the point I'm trying to make is we have a lot of seed starting area out there. So that's where we're going to be doing most of our actual seed starting. But indoors is where here's where we're doing our microgreens. So that's why we don't have a fan there, but a fan will definitely help out. We've also used cinnamon and hydrogen peroxide to help out in the past. And also, this is where sanitization really comes in. This is why we're going, like, we've spent so much time power washing and bleaching and all that, because we skipped that 1 year and it was a
Yeah,
disaster.
oh yeah.
So
It made
never
such
again.
a huge difference. We're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe, we hadn't done this. Oh,
Yeah. And this is also another reason why I recommend the biodome, because you're going to have way less issues with mold, because the sponges come to you like already sanitized, ready to go. Like, the biodome's already ready to go. Whenever you're dealing with like seed starting mixes, and especially if you're reusing any seed starting mixes, then you potentially have to go through and bake it to sanitize it and do things like that. There's a lot to it. So
we did have a question earlier, because don't worry, if you guys ask a question, I'm trying to come back to them as we go. But we did have a question about baking the soil, like how to go about doing that.
okay. Yep. So it's pretty simple. It's going to make your house smell bad. I will warn you that we learned that, because I think last year was the first time we really, like, baked soil, because we wanted to test it out, and we were just doing a lot of experimenting on this last year. So it's going to make your house smell bad. That is one thing. But it's as simple as it sounds. We basically just put the soil in. The easiest way we found to do it was to we have these, like, really big aluminum trays that we get from Sam's Club. They come in like a big pack, and we use them for all sorts of stuff. And this is one of the things we use them for is like those really big aluminum trays. We would just fill it with soil and then just bake it. Do you remember the details on how long we baked it or the
Oh my
temperature?
gosh,
Or
we baked it until it reached a certain temperature. I know because we would pull it out and stir it, and then we would use our temperature gun to find
yeah,
out what the temperature.
let us do some research on this, get the solid answer, and we'll put out a video and blog post that
Yeah,
details exactly. So we'll put that out in the next few days because I don't want to guide you wrong on the details. It's been a year since we did it, but we'll put out all the details on how we baked our soil and all that.
yeah. And then before we move to the next slide, Robin had a question about how to use the cinnamon and peroxide. So I'll tell you, whenever we had mold issues and I didn't clean my stuff beforehand, a bad Carrie, I knew better, but we had issues with mold. So I mean, really, if you just take the cinnamon and just go through and sprinkle it on the top. Like Dale walked in one day, he was like, "What happened in here?" And I was like, "Oh, I put cinnamon in there, and now it's all better." So
Yeah, I didn't
um,
know what it was. I just saw like all over like the biodome.
yeah,
Like,
because I spilled
yeah.
some on like the white part too, and he's like, "What is it?" But yeah, it helps so fast, and it really does help a lot if you have issues with mold. And then you can also do a hydrogen peroxide spray. It's like oh man, I looked up earlier. I think it was 4 parts hydrogen peroxide to 1 part water. That you put into a spray bottle and you just go through and spray the top. Now you don't want to like overdo that, but I do that at least once if I'm having issues with mold, and that will also like sanitize it.
Okay. And the same tips we've given for mold and for everything else applies to damping off too. So, damping off is a situation that you can run into where your seed sprouts and everything looks fine, and then suddenly it just kind of wilts and dies. This is something that's caused from, is it a bacteria?
Yeah, and you have too much water. Typically, it's when you're overwatering and your seedlings are just sitting in too much water.
Yeah, that's what
So
really allows that bacteria to breed, and then
yeah,
it's able to, yeah. So the way to prevent it again is the fan sanitization. That's the key there. That's what it's a reoccurring theme that you're going to hear in seed starting is make sure everything's sanitized, and a fan is going to make things a lot better for you because it's mimicking what's going on outside. And not only is it going to prevent issues, but it's also going to make your plants healthier as well. So,
so speaking of
um,
fans, does the fan, we had a few fan questions here. Does the fan make a difference in the temperature of the biodome?
I have
It's
not tested it, but I would imagine it would.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, this is an interesting experiment. I feel like that we should probably go
Hmm.
run now, but
Yeah, we're
I
gonna have
can
to.
imagine, I'm sure it does, but I haven't noticed any at least significant issues with temperatures whenever we have a fan versus not having a fan. So they just always do better with the fan. And then CJ was asking if you would use the fan after the seed sprouts and the biodome is removed, or even when the dome is on. So the dome itself is going to prevent the fan, like any air movement, unless you have the vents open on the top. Like typically, once we have, because I mean, you guys saw how many rows of seed starting areas we have, but once we remove any of them and have any sort of seed starts, we'll have the fan on. So even when the dome is on, we pretty much just have it running too.
Yeah, it just always sounds like an airplane is trying to take off in our garage when you go out there. There's just
Yeah, because we have so many different fans. We have those box fans. Then we also have just like standing circulating fans just to make sure we hit everything. Like, yeah.
yeah. Well, and we also have like some pretty big like industrial grade type grow lights like mounted on the ceiling of our garage where we're trying to grow peppers indoors year round.
Mhm.
We failed miserably at that because it got too cold in our garage. Um, but we still we have like other grow lights too that are very loud and they have fans in them as well. So it's just like our garage is very light and loud all the time. Okay. I think we both clicked next.
Yes, we did. Sorry. I clicked back, so we're back to where we needed to be.
All right, and the last issue you're probably going to be dealing with is unfortunately gnats and flies and things like that. We've especially in the summer, get pretty difficult. Like right now, it's not really an issue for us. We don't have any gnats or any of that in our seed starting stuff, but in the summer, it's a lot. So um, this is how we typically deal with it. So the cinnamon trick that Carrie talked about helps as well. Diatomaceous earth also works really well. You can find it. It's pretty easy to find now at this point. It's not as hard to find as it used to be, but it's just this powder. It's almost like flour, the texture of it, and you just sprinkle it over it, and it kills the insects by suffocating them. So it's not chemicals or anything like that, and that will help. Um, Traps. So we have these yellow sticky traps that we've used. We've had other gnat traps. Carrie, I don't see hydrogen peroxide on here though, and I know that's one thing you've done to help out with gnats in the past as well.
Um, oh, with the gnats. Well, essentially, typically, whenever we have gnat issues, we have like mold or some sort of like fungus issues also, because typically it's when we're overwatering and leaving a lot of water down below underneath, and then that's where the gnats are breeding. But
Yeah.
yes, if you put like the hydrogen peroxide spray on the top, it makes it so the gnats can't breed on the top of it. So that'll help with that.
And then the fan too, because it makes it really hard for the gnats to fly. So that's
Exactly.
another thing that helps a lot too. We don't have gnats on our seed starting area behind her in the kitchen. We don't have fans. I say gnats. We don't have fans on that one.
But we don't have
So,
gnats in there either, so
yeah, it works
I was
fine.
like, "Yeah, that's true, we don't." Luckily, yeah, hopefully none of those will, happen here. We're doing good right now.
Okay. And the last main thing that we want to talk about, and we'll talk more about this as we get deeper into the season, but this is something you need to know now, just so you're prepared for it, is whenever your seedlings are ready to go outside, you don't want to just take them directly outside. Like the shock from them going from an indoor environment to an outdoor environment is really going to hurt them. And sometimes it'll just straight up kill them. And it's not just like one thing that really helped me understand this and really helped me visualize this was it would be like taking a newborn baby outside in the sun, just with no protection from it, right? And it's like an adult would be okay with that because the skin has adapted to it, but a newborn isn't. And a plant is the same way. Whereas a plant that is still like in the process, still little like that, has not been exposed to the like the UV coming from the sun, and that is ultimately what usually leads to the downfall of a plant is just over sun exposure. Um, so make sure when you're introducing your plants to the outside, you're giving them just a little bit of sun at a time every day. Now, it's not just sun you got to worry about. There's the other conditions outside too. So there's, the wind and everything else, but it's really the sun that I'm most concerned about. And that's going to kind of help me dictate, not exposing them to too many other things too. So typically what I'll do whenever we start putting our plants outside is I'll first put them outside in the morning for a little bit so they get some morning sun and then bring them back in. And then the next time I might put them out like in the morning and maybe in the evening, avoiding that time in the middle of the day when it's really hot or, depending on like what's going on with the weather here. But the point is, I'm just gradually working that in until like over the course of a week or two, it's been outside, a whole week, a whole day, and it's able to be transplanted. And this applies to plants that like we're buying from a nursery, they're coming from a greenhouse, or even things if we were starting in a greenhouse, this would apply to that as well. So just want to mention that as well, because that is important. Good question here about hardening off cuttings. Um, it's probably not as important, but I still would. Um, but it's not going to be as because like cuttings that come from a rosemary, like those cuttings behind Carrie are going to be several months old by the time they go outside. It's not going to be like a tomato plant that maybe is only a month old by the time we're putting it outside or something. So and tomatoes usually aren't what we're seeing like the transplant shock from. This is especially like the biggest things this applies to, honestly, for us is going to be like broccoli and cabbage and all of those cool season crops because at the time that we're transplanting these outside in Oklahoma, like we get days in the 80s in February sometimes here in Oklahoma. Like um it can be really unpredictable. And if it happens to be one of those days that it's like particularly hot and we're transplanting out broccoli, or if it's particularly cold and we're transplanting out broccoli too, it can go either way, then that it's not going to survive. So anyway,
And
that's
Joe had a really good question about how when to harden off. So how many leaves? So I do want to point out these pictures down here below, because you'll want to look at how many sets of true leaves they have, and don't let the let it fool you. These over here are not true leaves. The true leaves are the ones that just look exactly like what the plant's going to look like. So you can kind of see a little true leaf coming in on the biodome right there.
on the
But
bottom right.
yeah, you want to make sure that it has at least like 2 to 3 sets of true leaves before you transplant them outside.
Okay. Well, we are almost at 1 o'clock already, but we can hang around a little bit longer. Do we have any other questions that we want to?
You do. We had a lot of questions that I've been trying to start to come back to. So we'll answer a couple, and then I have a winner
Cool.
propped up in here.
All right. Let's pull up a couple of these questions and then we'll announce the winner at 1 o'clock. Okay. Hey, Amy. Amy's our neighbor. Hey, how's it going? Um, yes, you will need a grow light in order to get started with the biodome. Unless you're growing like so there's some things you can grow on the windowsill this time of year, especially because the angle the sun's coming in.
He
Um,
does have a new greenhouse too. I know that. I'm jealous.
okay, can you talk about the trans? Oh,
I'm not pressing anything, I promise.
okay. There's like a bug, and so we use this app for live streaming, and there like I was clicking it, and it was bringing up something else, and I was like, "That's not what I clicked." So here's what I was trying to click on. Okay. Transplanting from the biodome out into the dirt. So it's really simple. All you have to do is, yeah, Carrie's, I think,
I'm
showing it
trying.
now.
It's
So
like
she,
dripping water on me. You gotta see. But there's these holes right here underneath. You just push them out and then pull them out. And
yep.
like,
And
yeah.
that's all there is to it. You just transplant that out, and then that will all become part of the plant, and that's all you have to do.
Yeah, we just put this into some soil. Sometimes like we like it looks like these, like I'm gonna need to up pot these or transplant them outside, but it is super cold outside. So I'm probably just going to up pot these. So I'll just put them into some soil up to here and it'll turn into that entire container that I up pot to.
Question from Donna. How long are the grow lights on? Okay, so if we're just growing like microgreens or something like that, I just do 12 hours on, 12 hours off, just to make it simple. If I am starting seeds for things that are going to go outdoors, I'm trying to be a little smarter about it. I'm trying to match what the sun is doing. So I'm making it to where the grow lights are coming on when the sun comes up and they're going off when the sun comes down. That way they're getting about the same amount of light that they're going to be getting when they go outside, and it's not going to be as much of a shock. Now, obviously, like the sun is not going to, I mean, the lights aren't going to compare to the sun, but still, it's keeping things as close as I can to what it's going to see outside. So that's typically what I'm doing if it's something that I'm starting seeds on. But for like microgreens or something like that, I'm just doing 12 hours on, 12 hours off. And one kind of tip here I want to give on how to control this. I've used the manual timers in the past, and those work. Those are fine. But I have started to switch things over to be like some of these smart timers. So Govee has these plugins that you can. Oops, I hit the mic. Sorry. I have these plugins that you can control from your phone. That's been really nice as well. Being able to go in and kind of adjust all of them at once on the fly, because it seemed like before all the different timers I had worked a little bit different, and it's always like trying to figure out like the little ring thing and where am I on it, and it's just easier for me to control it from a phone. I am like a developer. I'm a very like tech person, so I like doing everything from that anyway. But just want to mention that there are some technology advancements that have come out, that have made it a lot easier to manage things like that. So a lot of my grow lights and stuff, I am managing from within, even like Siri. I can turn everything on or off with that and do all that kind of stuff. I should probably make a video just all about that one day and just kind of nerd out on how I do that kind of stuff, because we have our watering automated too and that kind of stuff as well.
So I will say it is 1 o'clock. So we will continue to
Cool.
answer a couple more questions, but I did want to make sure that we did the giveaway here before, if anybody had to leave. So congratulations to Chrissy. Chrissy is the lucky winner of the 1 year premium Seed to Spoon app subscription. So now you get to have unlimited gardens, unlimited plants that you track, and you can get free shipping on all of your orders through the app, unlimited questions to Growbot, send Growbot some pictures, see what's going on with your plants. Yeah, so many great things. So
Congratulations.
congratulations. Yeah.
Just,
And if
yeah, just
you
email us info and we'll get you all set up.
yeah, and if any of you guys that are watching now after this gets posted, make sure you go back in and comment again on the video and you'll be entered in and we'll draw another winner next week. Okay, we had a few more questions too that I wanted to try to hit. I know we'll be mindful of everybody's time.
All right, I'm going back up here. So, our Chrissy, our winner, asked a question about space spinach and what is space spinach, and I will show you. So, in the app, one of the varieties that we have is the space hybrid, and I love it because it. So this is one. This is one of the varieties that gives you. We use it for both like the baby leaf, but it also produces like big leaves as well. Like some of the varieties like won't necessarily get that big. This does good as both. So this is the space variety right here.
While you have the app pulled up, we did have a question about can you start seeds too early? So I would always recommend going with the dates that are within the app because the app will give you like exact planting dates, and that's to have your plants like big enough so that way it's a good time for them to be transplanted outdoors at the correct time, and but not like get too big. Okay. So for the rosemary, we just use those in the biodome seed sponges there. And whenever we put them out there, if I'm just going to be up potting them, I use just the espoma seed starting soil. That's what we did last year. Worked really well. But whenever we take it out to the garden, we're going to be doing just our basic soil mixture.
I will say, like every single rosemary plant we have is going to go in a smart pot
Yeah.
because it handles extra water so much better. And this the rosemary likes being in a smart pot. So all those Mediterranean herbs like oregano, rosemary, thyme, all of them are going to be in smart pots. And that's the main way that we regulate, like not making or making sure they don't have too much moisture. And then for like once it goes outside, we make our own seed starting mix. We have guides on how to make all of that actually in the app. If you go to the dashboard and scroll down to videos, then we've got stuff that we change out here on a regular basis based on what's relevant to the season. So right here is how to make your own soil mix. We've got guides in here to how to make like your own PVC hoop houses that we make as well. Common seed starting mistakes. Like we've been doing this YouTube channel for how long now? Like 8 years, 7, 8 years. So
Yeah.
we've got a lot of stuff over the years that we've put out. So we try and curate it and kind of bring the stuff that's most relevant to you right here to the front in videos. And if you're more of a reading type, we've got that all here as well. So yeah, if you want to know more, check out the information in the app. We also do these live streams every Tuesday. We are right here on YouTube and Facebook live streaming. So yeah, do we have any other questions we want to go through?
We have several questions. I don't know how long we're going to be up here. I think we're going to need. This is about that time of year here soon where we need to have a live stream just dedicated to answering questions. I feel like we need another one of those here soon because we have a
Okay.
lot of them. So, but I do want to like I'll try to go back to if we didn't get to your question, just go back in, enter it as a comment, and then I'll go in and answer some questions too. So that
Sounds
way
good.
I answer everybody's.
And a lot of the stuff that Carrie's like creating as content that's going out like on a daily basis on Instagram and YouTube is coming from answering your questions like from here and stuff. So oh, I see a question here. Let's answer this one. It's caps. That's important. Thank you. I saw this earlier too, and I meant to pull it up. Thank you for bringing it up again.
Well, I think
Um,
we kind of covered it a little bit whenever we showed the true leaves, because it's
yeah,
going to be different timing for different plants. So
and
you
even
really
then, like tomatoes, like those are gonna have a lot of true leaves in March for us, but we're not able to put them outside
Mhm.
until it's not gonna be freezing anymore. So that's where the app comes in because once it's at the point where it has 2 to 3 tree leaves, you're safe to put it outside from the plant's perspective. So check the app and it'll tell you if you're within the date range, and then you'll know if you're good to go there or not.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. This was so much fun just sitting here and chatting gardening.
Yep.
But like Dale said earlier, we're going to be here same time, same place next Tuesday. And I hope to see you all there.
Thanks, everyone.
See y'all.
Have a good week.